KM Best in a snap.
What's up, y'all? I'm KM Best, and I'd like to talk to you about a theory that I've been seeing going around in the Marvel Snap community about deck matchmaking. Now, this theory has been expounded in many different forms, but the fundamental gist of it is that Second Dinner sees your deck and then changes your matchmaking based on the deck. So I wanted to dive into that once I saw this thread on the Marvel Snap subreddit with more than 2,000 upvotes and 800 comments, most of which agreeing with the top comment, which is espousing this theory. They say, I know Second Dinner says your deck doesn't matter. I'll never believe it. I played Hitmonkey the other day for hours. I saw one Thanos deck. I got bored and swapped to Thanos, and wow, imagine that. 60% or more opponents are now Thanos. Swapped to Galactus. 4 of the 6 decks I face, Galactus. So now I'm sitting here feeling like an election denier, about to invite Rudy over to represent me in my case. Well, so my response to this, I think, is fundamentally, first things first, do not call Rudy Giuliani for anything. That's a very bad idea. Second off, I would like to say that I understand the mentality of this, and I understand how it feels to go through something like this, because I know a lot of other content creators will look at this and they will say something along the lines of, you're a dumbass, you're an idiot, it's confirmation bias, you suck, get good. And I do think there is room for a little bit more nuance than that in a conversation like this, because my view on this is that it is an extremely human thing. It is an extremely human thing to experience something and assume there is a rational cause. Human beings are built for pattern recognition, right? They're built for understanding things that happen in the real world with causes and effects. If you, Cro-Magnon Neanderthal, notice that your brother drank from this river and shit himself to death because he got dysentery, you're not going to drink from that river, and that keeps you alive. And I know that that's like a pretty basic example, but that is what the human brain is built to do. If you watch Grok eat these berries and die, you're not going to eat these berries because you understand that there is a cause and an effect. You understand this, and this is kind of what separates us from a lot of animals, is understanding this in a conscious manner, right? So when something like this happens to you in a game, you see the effect and you look for the cause. And in this case, you look for the cause and you say the cause was me switching decks. And fundamentally, my understanding of this situation would be that the cause is not you switching decks. The cause is that is how randomness works. When you flip a coin, it has a 50-50 chance of coming up once on heads or on tails. But that is also true the next time you flip a coin. If you flip a coin and get heads, it doesn't mean the next one is likely going to be tails, because that there is a 50% chance. So obviously one's going to be heads and one's going to be tails. That's not how it works. Each one is a 50-50 each time. And the human brain is built such that it doesn't recognize these things as discrete events. So this is sort of the analogy I would draw is to a casino. If you've ever been to a casino, you see someone win on a machine, you'll see people go over to that machine because they think that's a winning machine. Alternatively, you might see people not approach that machine because that machine already paid out, and they're thinking, well, since that already paid out, it won't pay out again. And this is the same thing at work. We do not have the capacity to understand these things on a fundamental level as purely random without really diving in. So I do want to do a little bit of diving in to the arguments being made here, address them point by point, and talk about why this stuff sort of keeps coming up in a slightly more nuanced manner than you're an idiot for thinking this, because I do not believe that. So with regards to this first one, I would say it is entirely possible that that is just how your matchmaking rolls. If you played 20 games and you saw 4 Galactuses and 6 Thanoses, you'd be like, yeah, that's like a pretty normal session. But because you switched decks, you are now seeing an inference that we have no evidence that it exists. You are now seeing a proximate cause that you believe to be a proximate cause, but there is no evidence for it being a proximate cause. Now, before we jump into all of this, they did say at the beginning, I know Second Dinner has said your deck doesn't matter. I went and found the screenshot of that, actually, so I do want to pull that up right now. So here you can see a quote by Ben Brode saying, Matchmaker cannot see your deck. So I know we're going to dive into this because I know a lot of the people who espouse this theory obviously believe that they're lying about this, because why would you trust a company that's trying to make money off of you about this? I get it. So this is sort of what bothers me about it, is because there's like a sort of general correct assessment that the job of a company is to part you from your money, and they don't necessarily act honestly 100% of the time. That said, I think it is being misapplied here in such a way as to sort of assuage the feelings of those who feel they are being done wrong. That is not to say that a company would never do this. I just sort of fundamentally think that there are better ways of accomplishing the goal. So the fundamental argument seems to be, if you're assuming this happens, I'd like to know what the assumption is. And they tend to fall into two camps as to the basic assumptions of how this theoretical deck matchmaking works, right? So the first group of people assumes that they are being matched into counters, and the second group of people assumes that they are being matched into mirrors. So here we have one that says, all mobile games do this, every single one. Depending on the game, you'll get some version of enemy chosen against you based on how much money you spend, what loadout you use, etc. It's all geared toward what behaviors are most likely to be able to make you spend more money. People keep saying, I didn't notice it, so it must be true, completely ignorant to the fact that your experience in mobile games is specifically curated towards your play style and habits. Here's someone explaining why a company would actually do this, right? It's not that it's always rigged against you. Sometimes it's for you, sometimes not at all. They're constantly getting info on player stats and tendencies. They're able to see the optimum amount of winning and losing against the most people to spend money to do better. So the fundamental logic here is whether or not the person is arguing that they are being matched into counters or matched into mirrors, the idea is that you are being held artificially at a 50% win rate because Second Dinner and other mobile game companies believe that if you are held at a 50% win rate, you will spend money to get out of that 50% win rate, right? That is the idea. Here's the thing. That's actually true. Second Dinner does have a system in place to artificially keep you at a 50% win rate. That exists. It's called MMR. Now, for those of you who don't know what MMR is your matchmaking rating. And what it is effectively is a number that is put next to your name that represents your skill. For example, let's look over at chess. It's similar to ELO ratings in chess. Now, we have a ton of knowledge of how these MMR systems work. And fundamentally, the idea is the number matches you up against other people of that number, and then you go 50-50 against them once you've found your true MMR, where you belong at. So when you hit the point at which you are correctly ranked, you are going to be doing a lot of 50-50s. They already have a system that does that. It is built into every competitive game. You may hear it referred to as skill-based matchmaking. All it is making sure that the people you play against are about as good as you are. That's it. Now, they have that system in the game. So this is my major thing that really gets me about this is, what do they need this other ancillary system for? If they already have a system that pushes people towards 50% by existing and is accepted as the industry standard, why do they also need to do the alleged matchmaking rigging? And my proposal would be, they don't. But the fact that they already have a system in place that pushes you towards 50%, like, it makes this all sort of seem pointless. Like, yes, the company does want you at 50%. Yes, they want you to engage with their product more. And that means that you can't just be boringly stomping everything unless you're me and you're in body low. But they already have that ability. So that tends to feel a bit iffy as an argument for me. But what bothers me about it is the underpinning of it. A company's job is to part you from your money. A company may not be honest about these things. You shouldn't take these things at face value every time a developer says it. And if you have some evidence to the contrary, feel free to bring it up. Like, those are all true. It's just that the people saying this don't have any evidence to the contrary. And I'd be willing to listen if they said anything other than this thing happened to me in a small sample size. This thing happened to me in a small sample size. That's what every single one of these comments tends to be. I absolutely believe that mobile games can be and are exploitative in the same way that casinos are. My argument is that this specific method of exploitation is not cost efficient for them. There's no need to implement it. They have one in there already. And if you focused on things that actually were happening, maybe you could make a difference to this supposed exploitation in the first place. My hypothesis is that there's a deck rating that goes into matchmaking along with MMR. So when Second Ender says your deck doesn't matter, they mean they're not intentionally matching a destroy deck against Cosmo plus armor. This also explains why some people get lots of mirror matches when switching decks and others don't, because deck rating is only one aspect of matchmaking. The idea is that you're matched against someone with the same MMR and the same deck rating, so the mirror matches may become more common in some cases. So this is a sort of more reasonable version of the previous sort of argument, right? This argument, though, has one significant problem, and it's that we've actually tested this. I don't know if you're aware, a while back, I featured a Pool 2 Zoo video from a player named Cleanup141. Shout out Cleanup141, by the way. I hope he gets back to streaming soon. But one of the things that allowed me to say with confidence that this Pool 2 deck could compete with Pool 3 and Pool 4 and Pool 5 decks was that Cleanup, who was a player who was in my MMR bracket and my collection level bracket, in Pool 3, in Pool 4, was playing only Pool 2 cards against Pool 3 and Pool 4 decks. He did this for a month. For an entire month, this man who had cards in Pool 4, who had collection level in Pool 4, who had MMR higher than almost anyone else in the game, played only Pool 2 cards. And do you know what happened when he played only Pool 2 cards? Did he suddenly start playing against people who weren't in his MMR bracket or who didn't have a ton of cards? No. He kept playing the same people. He played me a couple of times. Like, if anything, the problem with matchmaking is that it's too loose, not anything else. The fact that this man could be playing Pool 2 cards only sort of disproves the entire deck score idea. Like, he's playing only Pool 2 cards for an entire month, and he's queuing into people playing the highest level of meta tier decks the whole time. In fact, it got so bad that the next month he tried to do it with only Pool 1, and he had to quit because he kept playing against Thanos. Like, this is the kind of thing that we have a lot of evidence suggesting this doesn't happen. And you can try to rework this theory to incorporate that if you want, but you need to have something more. If all the evidence suggests, all the evidence that we have, as far as I know, suggests this doesn't exist. And the only thing you have on your side in the argument is, I feel like this exists. You need something more. I'm not even saying it's impossible. Again, I understand. Companies are not always the most ethical about shit like this. I get it. You are right to be suspicious of companies. But if you are going to make claims, I have a big issue with the idea that, like, this isn't testable. It is. You could just go do it. You could go do it. You could go do it. Go play 200 games and use a deck that has like a lower score or whatever. However you think that works. I personally think that the main flaw in all of these theories is that they already have systems in place to accomplish the goals of keeping you at 50%. And they're a lot easier to implement than all this crap. Too many people keep having the same exact experience for it to be a coincidence, right? Like, this is strictly incorrect. A bunch of people believing something does not make it true. there are things out there that people believe in that are wrong. And these are not people who are just crazy or whatever. They're people just like you. Almost every one of us believes in something that is not true because we are not perfect. Human beings are not perfect, nor should we be expected to be perfect. And for that reason, I wanted to make this video in such a tone as to say, like, hey, look, I get it. But until I see some evidence here, I think this is kind of garbage. Like, there's nothing here that is a convincing argument for any of this happening other than it could happen, and I feel like it's happening. But there are plenty of things that I could say that about, you know? Like, I could say that instead of gravity, the thing that's actually holding us down is like an alien tractor beam. It could happen, and you can see we're being held on the earth. Therefore, like, look, it's right there. Like, those are the criteria. We've met the criteria. They're right there. Like, I guess I just sort of fundamentally wish that instead of talking about this crap, which until I see evidence for, I am going to continue to refer to as untrue, but I'm not going to say, like, you know, I'm not going to say 100% because I'm open to being wrong. That's part of being human. I could be wrong. I get it. And I am just sort of frustrated that, like, there are things that are wrong with the ladder. Marvel Snap's matchmaking is, in a way, super messed up. There are bots in the thing. The matchmaking bounds are not severe enough. The infinite players tanking their MMR, that sucks. It sucks to feel, it sucks to experience if you're a non-infinite player. It's one of the #1 complaints I see. Like, there are a bunch of real things that are wrong with Marvel Snap's ladder. A ton of them. And I feel like if maybe we spent a little bit more time talking about the things that are wrong with Marvel Snap that do need to be fixed in Marvel Snap instead of this. This is not real. If it is real, prove it. I'd love to see some evidence that is actually evidence and isn't just, I feel like it could be possible, or I feel like it happened to me. I would love to see that, because I'll tell you, here's the thing I was wrong about. I didn't think the cheating bots knew RNG, and I was wrong about that. I'm willing to change my mind on stuff like this. But the fact is, there are so many things wrong with Marvel Snap's ladder that I feel like wasting time on this is just so counterproductive to actually getting anything done. And it's like, I would rather see 10 million complaints about the price of cards in Marvel Snap, because at least that's based on reality. The cards in Marvel Snap are really damn expensive, especially as you get into Series 4 and Series 5. And at least that is giving feedback to Second Dinner about something that exists. Hey, your game is expensive. Make it less expensive. But this, all it does is make you look like an idiot regardless. Because even if you're right about this, you're not making an argument that is convincing in any way. You're not saying, this is a thing that is happening, and here is my proof. You're saying, I feel it. And that's not the kind of thing people are going to want to listen to you about. In my humble opinion, that's not the kind of thing. It's not the kind of thing that's going to outweigh, you know, statements from the devs saying this isn't a real thing happening, or the fact that Cleanup played an entire season with only pool 2 cards and still kept playing Thanos. Like, these are real things happening in the real world that can sort of show you that this is kind of not really a thing that the matchmaker cares about. It doesn't, there's not a lot of evidence for this theory. There's a ton of evidence against it. And I just wish that instead of talking about this, we talk about Marvel Snap's monetization, or the fact that there's too many bots on the ladder, or any of this stuff. Because I really have enjoyed playing Marvel Snap. And as much as I like to bag on the Marvel Snap community, I think it's a pretty good community as far as card games go. I have played other card games before. I would really, really like to see us as a community sort of leave this crap behind. And I don't mean to say you shouldn't be suspicious of a company and the statements they make. You absolutely should. But if you are going to be suspicious, I would hope that you back up your skepticism with investigation and evidence. I think that it's important to being taken seriously by basically anyone that if you're going to speculate on something, you come prepared with a couple of things to talk about, right? The way that before I made this video, I was like, all right, well, let's talk about each of these points. I went and found, hey, Cleanup did this. There strongly suggests that this isn't a thing. Hey, here's a dev statement saying that this isn't a thing. Like, there are things I can point to say, I don't find your argument convincing. And I feel like the only thing coming back from the other side is, well, I feel like it's true. And until there's something other than I feel like it's true, the fact that there are 3 major data websites out there, none of them have noticed anything like this in their tracking, should be a big red flag for you. The fact that the devs are out here explicitly saying this should be a big red flag for you. The fact that there is a guy who played Pool 2 decks with 3,000 collection level and didn't see any changes in his matchmaking should be a big red flag for you. And I would just hope that those red flags add up into something along the lines of, being skeptical of Second Dinner if you want, but focusing that skepticism on issues that exist in reality. Alternatively, if you can prove me wrong, go nuts. As always, this has been KM Best. I will see you next time.